My log has something to tell you.
This morning, we are continuing our journey through Stalking the Wild Pendulum, the book the CIA used to break open their agents' minds and give them access to powers like remote viewing, telekinesis, and beyond. We're deep into this one. We're on chapter 7. We're going to be exploring the superconsciousness, ghosts, and the relative realities tonight or today or this morning, whenever you're listening. So let's not waste any more time. It's a little shorty, so we're going to be spending just a little bit of time together. Shorty of a little chapter, and it's called The Parable of the Bicycle. But let's get to the good shit. Let's get to the reading. Let's get to the wasteland. It may indeed be difficult for many of the readers to accept what has been said until now. I would like to remind them that meaningful breakthroughs in science, art, and technology come not by figuring out things to the nth degree, but through intuitive leaps or insights, which are later rationalized as mentioned before. When operating in uncharted territory, intuition is the only thing we can rely on. Take as an example entrepreneurs. In making decisions, these people rely to great extent on their intuition or gut feeling, as they call it. The reason for this is that the number of variables to be considered in each decision is just too great to handle. And with conditions constantly changing, it is simply impossible to figure things out completely. So they rely on their intuitive input. They will say that the decision felt right, that they knew that things would work out for the best. Now, considering how large a component of your civilization is constituted by business, we should perhaps have a little more respect for intuition. We have suggested before that the material we have discussed until now is self-validating. This means that anybody who is willing to make the effort can find out about these things himself and confirm them for himself. And he's talking about all the wild shit we've talked about, from reincarnation to the other realities of the astral plane, the mental plane, the spiritual level, and then the absolute, and all the entities that inhabit those areas, those levels. Check it out on the other read-throughs if you want to. But let's use here an example of the bicycle. Suppose that we show a bicycle to someone who has never seen one and try and convince them that it is a safe and practical conveyance. He will think that we are joking, since it is clear through observation that the bicycle is a highly unstable contraption. Clearly, no amount of explaining will help, and only after learning how to ride it, and that includes an ample number of bruised knees and elbows, will our subject be convinced of the merits of the bicycle. In other words, only after having gone through the subjective experience is he ready to start using the bicycle and even begin to persuade others of its merits. He recognizes that in his previous thinking, he missed an important point, and that was the invisible principle of inertia that keeps the bicycle upright when in motion. Sooner or later, science will have to come around and use this method in evaluating things that are invisible, subjective, but nevertheless reproducible. And when he's talking about that, something that is invisible, subjective, but still reproducible, that's something like remote viewing, where it's a completely subjective experience in the remote viewer's mind, but it's something that is reproducible. They can go to the place over and over again, and they could validate what the person is seeing. We can visualize the possibility of asking a group of 100 people to put themselves into a certain well-defined level of consciousness and have them describe their experiences. If the majority of the subjects independently describe similar experiences, and these are reproducible, then we may have to admit that we are dealing with real states common to all, thus establishing a fact. Experiments of these kinds are conducted today by the so-called biofeedback experimenters, by those who study hypnosis and altered states of consciousness, and, last but not least, the drug companies. The only way to find out how psychoactive drugs affect the system is to give the drug to people and ask them to describe their reactions to their experiences with the drug. There is no effective way to measure such subtle effects. the reported experience of the majority of people who have taken the drug is fed back to the chemists who can then modify the drug accordingly. Let's go back to chapter 4. In the experiment with time, we offered evidence that it is really not very difficult to function consciously in the reality next to ours. Those readers who manage to slow down or stop the watch altogether have actually projected themselves and stayed for a while fully aware in the so-called astral reality. Let us analyze what happened. In the instructions, it was suggested that you transport all your sensory and reasoning apparatus to a different point in space at time, to the quote-unquote beach. When this is properly performed, your physical body has, for all practical purposes, displayed a temporary death. That is, your physical eyes did not register the physical reality around you, nor would your ears. Your senses were registering a different reality, which occurred in the past. Therefore, you have experienced a tilting of your subjective space-time coordinates by a certain angle to the objective frame of reference. To those who managed to slow down time by a certain amount, the angle was somewhere between 0 and 90 degrees, while those who managed to stop time almost completely, the angle came close to 90 degrees. At that point, their subjective space axes were pointing into the objective past, and the subjective time axis into objective space, while objective time required for the operation was diminishing rapidly. Therefore, persons who managed almost to stop time, these will be invariably creative types, could not only go to a nearby beach, but to any place in the universe within the time that it would have taken them to visualize their destination, aka remote viewing. This is because they have projected their sensing and reasoning apparatus or their observer at practically infinite velocities to the wanted destination. It is creative visualization that can take them there. In short, the ingredients most helpful for being able to function in the different realities are, as we have mentioned before, creative visualization and a steady mind. Whether we achieve these levels or not depends on the extent of development and refinement of our nervous system, which determines the extent to which we can expand our consciousness and how far we can range in levels beyond the physical. Such development can be achieved only by meditative techniques. Sometimes, though, such development may occur spontaneously, or due to some accident. A person will tend to become unbalanced because of his inability to distinguish between the physical and the new realities he suddenly sees. He will eventually be diagnosed as schizophrenic because he will see or hear things which a normal person does not see or hear. And let's dive into the observer. We have come to a point at which we can define in more familiar terms our observer. We see from all that was said before that the traveling mobile entity is our sensing feeling apparatus, or our astral body. And the reasoning apparatus, the one that can interpret the events, our mental body. When the individual is well developed, he can utilize his causal or intuitive body as well. If we put these three together, we may find that the best way to describe these elements is to call them our psyche. This psyche is independent of the body, but uses the body as a kind of garage in which it stays most of the time. The more traditional name for the psyche is the soul. That's what I like to call it. The psyche, or soul, serves as a bridge between the physical level and our real selves, spiritual beings, who operate on the physical level through the mediation of the psyche. The distance between the spiritual entity, which we call the higher self, and our physical reality in terms of quality of consciousness is so large that the spirit could not directly operate a normal physical body. It needs an intermediary between psyche or soul to do the job. The spiritual level is the highest shown on figure 30, and figure 30 was his levels of reality, starting of course at the bottom with like the mineral, or atoms, very bottom, mineral, animal, human, then astral, then above, entities above and beyond to the absolute. The spiritual level is the bridge to the absolute. And let's talk about that spiritual level. Now, it's unfortunate that the word spirit or spirits in the English language is so versatile. It is used to denote the liquid kind of spirits and to describe disembodied entities, that is, people without physical bodies, and spooks of all kind. From the benign garden variety to vicious, malevolent, degenerate entities. We shall use the word spirit or spiritual to describe the highest level of human evolution, which borders on the absolute. It is very difficult to draw any sharp demarcation lines because the very highest spiritual merges into the absolute, which is the level of the creators. It is therefore directly connected with the knowledge and the structure of the universe and the cosmos. As you may remember from the description of the causal level, knowledge comes as chunks of information, not in linear sequential form, as we normally absorb knowledge. Take, for example, the way we look at a picture. Our eyes scan it in a zigzag fashion, and so bit by bit, we take in the information contained in the picture. In the causal region and above, the picture would have been imprinted on us as if our whole body would make contact with it in a flash, like an instant contact point. We would realize the picture in all its minuscule detail in an instant, and then have plenty of time to contemplate its meaning. The same system of gaining knowledge holds true in the spiritual realms. That's just talking about as we ascend in dimensions, it's more like knowledge is just beamed to you. It's not like it is down here. Individual interests naturally vary, and so will the information imparted to them on all levels. If someone's interest lies in cosmology, he will probably obtain information on the structure of the universe and the cosmos in as much detail as he can comprehend at the moment. The important thing to realize is that the universe, through its incentive system, which we call evolution, is anxious to impart as much knowledge as possible to its sentient beings in order to allow them to move as fast as possible along the evolutionary ladder and develop consciousness to the highest possible degree. The universe wants to make itself known to those who can comprehend its language, and that language becomes more and more intelligible to us as our spiritual component unfolds. Now let us make it clear, spiritual does not mean that it has anything to do with religion as we know it. Religious leaders are sometimes called spiritual leaders. It has to do only with the development and refinement of the nervous system and the accompanying rise of the level of consciousness, which has reached a point in frequency high enough on the scale of quality of consciousness to resonate with the highest levels of creation. This automatically entails the development of inner moral values and the development of the heart. By this, we mean that a person on that level of development will automatically tend to help people in need and will radiate an energy that on the physical level is expressed as the emotion called love. We could define love as energy and not an emotion, since emotions are confined to the physical and astral levels of reality. Beyond those levels, emotions are not encountered as you rise up to the absolute. Therefore, what we call love is an energy or radiation that pervades the whole cosmos. It is possibly the basis of what we know as the phenomena of gravitation. Ooh, that is a wild one, Itzhak. Love is gravity, baby. To function on this level is the goal of all yoga training. The word yoga means union, by which is meant union with the absolute. An accomplished yogi is able to function on all levels of creation, to describe events in the past and the future. And because the energy exchange curve is very high on this level, he is able to influence nature in a positive way. Eventually, he becomes a factor stimulating evolution of mankind and of the planet. Woo! I thought this was just gonna be a little short whoop-de-doo of a chapter, but dang, it's another banger. The last chapter was all about like ghosts and ghouls, and that was sick. And this one, hell yeah. In this chapter, we have been singing praises to the spiritual level of consciousness and the rewards of those who achieve it. But this does not mean that the universe is spiritual. The universe just is. However, what we call spiritual development is the key to achieving a subjective and objective understanding of the universe. And there's no right or wrong way, dude. They're just among the spiritual states most frequently described in literature is the so-called cosmic consciousness. This is the state in which the person witnesses his own actions as if watching someone else act. He is not overjoyed when his actions succeed, nor is he depressed if they don't. He will usually see the finer or subtler bodies of people and objects and the interactions between people as energy flows between them. In other words, he will see people acting simultaneously on the different levels of consciousness. An all-pervading peace settles on him as he understands that he is an immortal spirit operating on this level to gain experience. He understands the hints that nature gives him in symbolic form, which say, here, look, this is how I operate. He understands the meaning of as above, so below, and knows that nature will tend to reuse a successful design many times over on all levels of creation, with perhaps slight modifications. In short, the design of the microcosm reflects the structure of the macrocosm, and vice versa. We've talked about that many times on here. It's one of the favorite ideas to really try and wrap your mind around. I'm still trying, like, the idea of as above, so below, and how that everything operates on that, you know? There are states above that of cosmic consciousness. Those are states in which nature opens up to the observer and shows its underlying principles and structure. In this state, a person can know anything that is happening in the cosmos in an instant. He is not bound by space or time. Indeed, communication in the cosmos does not depend on time, as we hope to show later. Perhaps you're asking at this point, well, who's running the show? Who is demonstrating all these purportedly wondrous things to the people in high spiritual states? The answer is that it is the higher self. The higher self is the highest component of man and is a chip off the old block. It is a small part or an element of the creator, our higher selves. We're all part of the same fucking creator, man. We understand the difficulties some people may have with the concept of a creator. However, we find greater difficulties in assuming that there is no one responsible for the creation of the cosmos. Since no one will argue or try to deny the existence of a physical universe, we find it much more natural to assume that there is someone who is minding the store. It would be difficult to prove the opposite. The higher self is the spirit within us, and being part of the creator, the higher selves are all connected and communicating with each other. It is the business of the higher self to put the personality through the experiences of life and interactions with others, thereby gaining knowledge and learning to know itself. In a way, we may say now that the whole universe is an information gathering system. The creator breaks himself up into little units in order to be able to experience all the possible interactions among his particles on all possible levels, thereby learning to know himself. Evolution is the built-in urge that pushes all matter to higher and higher complexity, allowing experiences to occur at even higher levels. The higher self cannot effectively interact with the physical body that has not been properly developed. It communicates, therefore, with the psyche or the soul. It takes many lifetimes and a sustained effort to develop one's consciousness to a point at which direct interaction between the personality and the higher self becomes possible. However, once that point has been reached, the person becomes guided directly by the higher self. He starts relying more and more on intuitive knowledge, which is funneled to him directly from the highest possible source. At first he intuits, and later he knows this source. It makes him happy and content to feel that his experiences on this high level are a contribution to the total experience bank of the universe. It's like the Stoic principle of everything that happens is good, and everything that happens for a reason. Summary: what the hell do we talk about today? Meaningful breakthroughs in science come through intuitive leaps. The material presented here is self-validating because with some effort, these statements can be checked out by anyone. This will be a subjective validation. The time has come to utilize knowledge that is gained by subjective means. The observer is our sensing, feeling, information processing apparatus. It serves as a bridge between the material body and the spirit. The observer is the psyche or the soul. And utilizing this knowledge, I mean, we know agencies are already doing that with remote viewing and other such things. So, intuitive knowledge comes in chunks and is processed later. The higher self is the spiritual us. It communicates to us through the soul or psyche because it cannot effectively interact with the material body. All higher selves are connected and are in constant communication. So all our higher selves right now, if you're watching this, are hanging out with each other. Literally. They're up there like this. So enjoy it. Have a great rest of your day. I'm sending positive thoughts at you. I hope whatever you do succeeds. That's all I got for you. A shorty today. Ta-ta. And I'll catch y'all later.